My friends, it's been a long time. Hello. And welcome to my where am I? Sorry. You know how these things go with me and my getting started. And it's been so long and the morning has been so nutty you know, I don't know. It's been a nutty couple of weeks because I moved. As you can see, I have a completely different background. Welcome to my guest room. I actually have a guest room. It's very exciting. Actually, it's where I'm sleeping these days because I don't have a bed for the primary bedroom. So, anyway, that was probably all a little more information than you ever wanted. But I'm happy to be back with you as crazy as the day has begun. And my dog is out of her crate. She probably will start barking at any moment. So, um, and I just had a last minute audition, which is why I'm running late. And so, my apologies for seeming a little bit scattered, and I definitely am scattered. Um, I hope that you are well, and again, I'm happy to be back with you. I think it's been a month, feels like it's been a year. I'll tell you that. And so much has happened. Um, the biggest thing for me, of course, is that I bought a house and I moved, and I'm still getting myself settled, and I'm still putting the finishing touches on certain things, and haven't put anything on the walls yet and done all of that personalizing kind of thing. But that is coming. I have been bleeding money, which, everybody tells you. I had the place painted from top to bottom, and I got new kitchen countertops and all new lighting fixtures and all that kind of stuff. And it's extraordinary, the expense, but that's life, and that is actually my good fortune. I feel very, very, very fortunate. So I'm not complaining at all. I'm just remarking on the truth of it, which I know those of you who've bought houses and remodeled things, you understand. So anyway, that is my update, and you are already saying hello in the comments, which I really appreciate. And if you haven't yet, please do say hello. Today, we're going to talk about refreshing our careers, which, we've sort of touched on these things before in other topics. And I've been thinking a lot about it, as I have just refreshed my kitchen, which was a perfectly functioning kitchen prior, but I wanted it to look new. I wanted it to have a different feel. I wanted to make it mine, um, as opposed to just, what was here when I landed, right? And so I've been thinking a lot about this, and thinking about what are the kinds of things that, you know, that we do to sort of give our careers new energy and new purpose. Um, and it is a lot of the same. Uh, it is a lot of the same stuff, that we have talked about previously. Um, and the thing that really ties it all together, of course, is a shift in our perspective, right? Um, we have to imagine the thing that we want, just like with my kitchen. And let me tell you, I'm not visual. So this notion of imagining what I want it was hard. It was like, well, I don't really know. I don't really know if those colors go together. I don't really know if um, this butcher block countertop is going to go with these dark hardwood floors. Like I can't see it. I can't see it. And so through the process of that, I would really, I really, what do I want to say? I was intent upon finding images of the things that I liked, and I would think, yeah, that like that. I want it like that, and I made a collection of these things so that then I started to be able to see in my mind's eye what it is that I wanted. And I think it's the same with our careers. What do we imagine? What do we want our careers to look like? And if we can't imagine that, we ought to set about the business of looking at other people's careers. And I know that's difficult, right? Because there are people's perceived careers and then there's the actual career. And the things that we see online are, are people's perceived careers. Nonetheless, it's a really good place to start. So if you um, So if you look at someone's career, and you go, "Yeah, I want a career like that." Well, start naming what are the things that you like about that career. That you, when you say, "I want that," what are the specifics? Is it that they work in a variety of genres, and you perhaps only work in one or two? Well, that gives you a clue as to where you ought to set your sights in refreshing and shaking things up with your career, right? Is it that they seem to have a work life balance that you really like? That you see them, you know, actually doing things like taking vacations and maybe leaving their gear behind, like they're able to let go of certain things that you perhaps are not able to let go of. Um, those are the things that begin to help us figure out what it is that we need to do in order to give new life to our careers. And so then, like, what are those things? And it's always going to include learning something new, always. So does that mean that you need to take a class in a new genre? Does that mean that you need to refresh a demo? Does it mean that you need to reimagine your website and what your image is? Because I'll tell you, even, taking new pictures and having them up on your website, you know, will give you a sense of like, oh, that is me in 2022, or that is me in 2023, right? And it shifts your mind, and you begin to perceive yourself differently, right? I'll tell you that, in the 90s and the 2000s, really, those are the times when my career, when I made shifts in my career. And the things that I did, I was always redoing my demos. Like every 2 to 3 years, I would shift up my demos, and I would do mailings, and I would, as formats changed, I always stayed on top of the shift in technology, right? I always did that. And every time I did, I would get, I get new pictures. I made sure that I didn't, it's like I made sure that I've always used my image, right, as a part of my branding. And so I always felt like, well, my image has to be up to date. Like I'm not going to be this age and have a picture of myself from 1994. I'm not going to do that. So I always keep them within a 2 to 3 year time frame. And even redoing pictures is energizing, right? But the thing that I realized, and that am kind of drawing on here, is that every once in a while, I would feel a lag in my career and realize that I was sort of in a rut with the particular representation that I had. And that's where I come from, right? Like I live in the world of voiceover as represented by agents, and I know a lot of you don't, but hear me out. Um, so there were times when I realized, oh, I'm kind of stuck in a rut here. Like I'm not able to do other things that I really want to do. And I felt a little stagnant, right? And realized I couldn't go any further with the representation that I had. And so the 2 or 3 times that I made shifts, when I made that shift, right out of the gate, I booked. I booked. I can. I mean, it's true that twice when I did that, the very first thing I read on, I booked. And so, what's that about? What is that about? You know, uh, it's an interesting thing to think about. I feel like I felt this renewed sense of needing to show the people that represented me what I could do. So I felt like I was more on my game, right? I was more attentive. Um, you know, I, I wasn't taking things for granted, right? So sometimes I think we the thing that gets us in a rut is that we're taking everything for granted, right? It's not that I so much changed and became a better voice actor overnight, moving from one agency to the next. It's that it was like, okay, there are new people around me and I have something to prove. And I needed to prove it. And I think to be able to incorporate that sense of, you know, the importance of being on your game, that it matters, that these auditions matter, that that if it's if it's on a pay to play, if it's with an agent, that it's like we take these things, we bring our best selves, to the game, right? So I think that's it's not magical, that I moved from one agency to another. There's no magic there. It's that I shifted my mindset, my perspective. And I was like, all right. It's like, you don't go to a brand new agent and show up in the lobby. I'm so dating myself here, but you don't, show up in the lobby 15 minutes late, right? It's like you're early because you need to make a good impression. So it's that thing of making a good impression every single time you audition, right? So there's that piece, right? That we are responsible for our attitude and our mindset every time we step into the booth. And if we want to refresh our careers, we refresh our reads, and we refresh our reads by refreshing our attitude. Kind of like that. Um, so it doesn't necessarily mean that, in order to refresh ourselves, we have to go out and spend $500 on a 6-week workshop. Those are options, right? Taking classes, learning something, as Beth Chaplin, hello, Beth, learn to enjoy the learning. That's absolutely true. All of it needs to be intriguing to you, you know? Learning something new ought not be a chore. It ought to be fascinating to you, and you ought to be curious about it. We ought to be curious about the new things that we're learning. Um, and again, I did this well, well, well into my third decade of doing voiceover by going back and being a beginner with animation, with video games. So it's also that whole beginner mind thing, right? So there are lots of little things, right? Maybe, dare I suggest, I know people who are represented at particular agents and they are happy to be on a roster, but nothing's getting done, right? They're not getting the auditions that they want to get. They're not, you know, and there's nothing magical about being represented, right? You may be on a roster, but are you getting the opportunities that you want? And if you're not, talk about a grand refresh, ask yourself those questions. How is this relationship working out? And am I getting the opportunities that I want? Is there some place I'd rather be? Do I, should I set my sights on something more challenging? Um, these are all the ways in which we can liven up our careers. Um, and, you know, there's always going to be some risk there, some trepidation. That's the necessary part. I have a friend who's thinking, who's like, feels like he's not getting enough opportunity. Um, and there's there's the possibility that he might seek out representation with a different agency, but if he does, he might have to drop one or two of his other agents. So that's a risk, right? But and we always ask ourselves the question, well, what if it doesn't work out? And you know, what if it does? That's the thing, right? That's we have to be smart and wise, and we have to calculate, and um, we have to really weigh these things, when we make decisions about, um, that are challenges, right, to our careers. So we have to weigh things, but at a certain point, we really don't know until we take the leap. And that was that beautiful phrase, from the writer's, no, the artist's way. I think this came from the artist's way. Um, Leap, and the net will appear. That was a really liberating phrase when I first heard it. Like, we really do have to trust and be brave. Um, so let me go to your comments and see what's going on. John, Yvonne, Chris, Genevieve, Beth, hello. I'm so happy. Janet, hello. Oh, I'm so glad that you found me, Janet. And Beth, thank you so much for that comment. Yes, there's always more to learn. It is true. Always, always, always there's more to learn. Always. Um, so let's see. Hang on one sec. Um, okay. Uh, wow, I just lost my focus there. Somebody texted me and it just came up on my screen. Anyway, that is pretty much what I have to say. Um, we can uh, we can do these external things, right? We can take a class, we can get new pictures, we can update our website, we can redo a demo, um, refresh a demo, right? It's just, refreshing a demo does not necessarily mean that you have to start from scratch. If you've got some good stuff, and you want to add a new little piece, those things really help. That's how my demos have evolved over the years. It's not like I go, okay, I'm scrapping this whole thing, I'm starting over with everything new. Nope. I just kind of slowly remove one, add another, remove one, add another. And, over the course of 5 or 6 years, like, I have a new demo, and it wasn't a big expense, you know. I've done that even, I've taken auditions that I really love and I've had a really great engineer put sound effects or music to it, and it'll cost me $50. It was a really great audition that I loved and I wanted it on my demo. And so I did that. Right. So there are little ways, that we can make improvements that just give us a little bit of a like, oh, that's a little something new. Right. So there are these things that we can do externally that are going to maybe cost us a little bit of money. But then there's the whole thing of a shift of your mindset, which doesn't cost you a dime. Um, these are things, you shift your mindset by reading, by absorbing new information. Um, any opportunity you have to improve the quality of your life is going to refresh your career, because you're going to have new ideas and you're going to have a new perspective and a new lens through which to look. So I'm going to leave it at that. Um, Shaking things up a little bit requires a little bit of examination, a little bit of envisioning what it is that you want your career to look like, and then taking little steps um, to make little shifts, little improvements. Your thoughts, John, your thoughts on figuring out if a refresh is needed? Get advice from a coach, peers? No, I think, John, it's all about how you are perceiving your career. If you're feeling good about the auditions that you're getting um, the relationships that you have, and you're feeling like your demos are solid and your branding is on point, if you're at the point where you're branding, right? um I think we know it internally if we need a little kick in the pants. It may be that we just feel like our auditions aren't up to snuff because of how we're doing, what it's like in the booth for us. It's like if we're struggling with a particular piece of copy, or we're just like overwrought about, how we're doing something. Um, and of course, if people are around you are sort of saying, "Hey, I need a shift in your read," or it may be that you get external input, but mostly I think it comes from within, because we get restless, right? We get restless. It's like, oh, this has been going on like this for a while. I want things to change. That's when, um, sometimes I just do it as a matter of looking at the clock and going, how long's it been since I've refreshed my promo demo? Wow, it's been 3 years. I should find some work I've done and, add to it, add to my demo. Um, yeah, Janet, it's true. Like really, this refreshing of demos doesn't need to be a $1,000 venture. It really doesn't. Um, just add a little bit at a time. Believe it or not, I still have things on my demo, my commercial demo from like the late 90s. Now, I know that's crazy, but it happened to be I think a Dockers, a Levi's commercial or something. So the brand is still around. And it was a really cool spot. And it was really it was an undersell. It was very understated, which is, it's still the trend. And so it works, it stays. And I still sound like that. And so it doesn't matter if something is old, as long as you still sound like that and it's current and the company is still in business, you know? It's like, I'm not going to put an airline, spot on for Pan Am, or from Virgin America. Doesn't exist anymore, right? Even though I don't even know if they did advertising like that. But I'm just saying, like, you don't want to, you don't want to use a company that's an old spot where they're out of business. Like no Blockbuster. You don't want a Blockbuster ad on your demo. Um, so I think I'm gonna leave it at that. Um, uh, do I know a good coach, John? I know several. If you guys are interested in, well, obviously you know I coach, but I know that I got the wink. But I also have resources for other coaches who teach other things, which I'm, totally happy to share information. So if anybody ever needs a coach, don't ever feel badly if you want to put a question in this group, like anybody know a good voiceover coach. I'm not offended. Like there are a lot of coaches, and I teach a thing. So there are lots of coaches that teach other things, um, who are like totally valuable. So don't ever be afraid to ask for resources, even if I am not the resource that is pointed to. Like that, oh my gosh, it's like so not the point of doing this. Like ask your peers here, really, truly. All right, I'm going to let you go, and I will see you next week, I believe. I think we're back on track, and I hope you have a great week and great rest of your week, a great Wednesday, and a fantastic weekend. I will be hanging pictures, maybe putting together another piece of furniture or two. I'm so done with that. Like, I think I just got myself like a TV console. The only thing I have to do is screw in the legs. I'm very excited about that. All right, you guys. Have a good one. As always, feel free to continue to post comments if you're watching this on the replay. I will check in and you know where to find me. All right. Have a good one. See you soon. Ciao.